My name is Judy and I'm the City Stitcher, and welcome to my Flosstube channel. Today is Sunday, September the 4th. We are into the back third of the year, and it is a glorious, beautiful, sunshiny, heavenly warm day. Slurpee season continues. It won't continue forever. I think there are a few days this week coming up that are temperatures that will make a lot of other people happier, and I will be very sad to see Slurpee season go, because we all know I enjoy a good Slurpee. So this room continues to be lovely and warm. The lighting is a little unusual today because as we get further into the year, we all know the way the sun is moving changes. So I tried the other way, which meant I was blinded by the light. So I have closed the drape on that side so that I'm not blinded, but at least there is light in the room. The other thing I will speak about is, because it is a beautiful sunshiny day, there is a breeze, which is great. It helps. I have both windows open so that I can get a cross breeze, so that hopefully I won't be too glowy. But it does mean there may be a little bit of rattling and weird things going on and noises from the park behind me. So there might be a little more background noise than we normally have, because I want the cross breeze, because it's glorious warm, which means stitching in here tonight will be awesome. It's just a little warm right now in the afternoon. Anyway, I hope everybody's had a good stitching week. This is a channel about cross stitching and the stitching that I've done this week. So if you are a new viewer, thank you for stopping by and spending some time with me. And as always, a great big thank you to those of you who return regularly to catch up on my stitching journey and what I've managed to accomplish in the past week. Like I had a moment going, I wrote the comments that I was responding to down, and I was afraid I lost the piece of paper. So I got a comment from Girly in Norway, and I had a little bit of a chuckle, and Girly is totally fine. She said she was looking forward to when I was going to work on Bethlehem next, and the answer is, I think you mean Jerusalem, and I'm not exactly sure when that's coming, but you know, stay tuned, we'll see. Unfortunately, apparently Norway, or certainly the part of Norway where she lives, has had a terrible summer. Terrible summer. So you've got the UK, who is experiencing 40 degrees Celsius, which is, you know, that's not a nice warmth. That's a too hot warm for me. Even for me, that's too hot. Certainly if you're living in a country that doesn't have a lot of air conditioning. My summer here in Canada, where I live, as far as I'm concerned, has been a beautiful summer, and I've loved every minute of it. So I'm very sorry, Girly, that you have had a very cold winter. She said she had ice on her car windows twice. Okay, that doesn't sound like a fun summer, so I'm very sorry about that. I wish the UK could have sent some of their 40-degree weather over to you, because that maybe would have balanced a few things out. Stephanie commented that she appreciated my organizational techniques, and let's just remember, it's like Instagram and other things, you get to choose what you show. So I'm really glad that it looks like I'm really organized, and I do have some organization. Don't kid yourself thinking that I'm uberly organized. Right? I get to choose what I show. So in certain areas, if I turned the camera around, you'd go, okay, not organized. And certainly the funny thing is I have a basket of things that I need to put into my Xstitch app. So we're back in that episode that once I get this done and loading, hopefully I can go out onto the balcony into the beautiful, glorious, sunshiny weather and spend my time on my Xstitch app with my bucket of things that need to be added. She also made a comment about Pocket Mags, and that she had bought something from Pocket Mags, but she had a really hard time printing from it. So there is, so one of the issues with Pocket Mags is when you're downloading the things, the patterns out of Pocket Mags, you can only download 2 pages at a time. So if you're used to, like, so Punch Needle Primitive Stitcher magazine, when they release their electronic versions, you can download the entire magazine. You know, so for PNPS, because I have a subscription this year, which was a gift from my parents, I download the electronic version, so I've got them all, and then from there, from the downloaded PDF version, I print the pages, like if I wanted to print if I wanted to stitch a specific chart. So for example, when I did Deb's Winter Biscornu that I did for my StitchCon gift, so I printed the pages for that particular chart so that I could put it into Dropbox, so that I could get it onto my iPad and I could stitch from my Markup RXP. Sorry, Flosstube itchy nose. So the thing with Pocket Mags is that you can only download 2 pages at a time. So if you go into the print function, pick the 2 pages. So it may take you, depending on how big your chart is or how many pages it goes across, you may have to do more than 1 print. But get the pattern, and then, so depending on what you've got a couple of choices once you get the 2-page sections down. So I know I was downloading something from Pocket Mags, and when I'm downloading them and I'm downloading them in 2-page junkets, there was a pattern that I was downloading, and I had, like, you know, name of pattern part 1, name of pattern part 2, name of pattern part 3, and name of pattern part 4. It was a big one. I think it's because it also had finishing instructions. So once you've downloaded your 2-page sections, you've got a couple of options if you're wanting to combine them into one file. So depending on which version of Adobe Acrobat that you've got, certain versions allow you to combine files. So if you have a version that allows you to do that, that's one way. The other one is if you're actually looking, if you're doing a physical copy, you don't have an issue because you can just print the pages out. The other one is that you'd have to print the pages out and then rescan them in as one document if you don't have an Adobe version that allows you to combine multiple PDF files. So hopefully that helps. If that doesn't help, just throw another comment down below. Happy to talk about it. Like I say, I'm living in a world where I'm trying to get as much as I can into Markup RXP because I've turned into a ridiculous geek with that thing. We'll talk about that later. That's going to come up in discussions. So yeah, so I print them in 2-page sections, throw them down onto my computer so that when I go to stitch them, whenever that happens, I can then sort of bring the files up and bring them into Markup RXP. So hopefully that helps. Carol was commenting that she was going to be in Canada this week because her husband was coming up to participate in the Penticton Ironman triathlon. So wow, good for him. I have a friend who he has periodically participated in that one. I have to admit I have not caught up with him recently, so I don't know if he and his family were also in Penticton for that this week. But the interesting thing about running that triathlon in Penticton, particularly during the summer, is it can be really, really hot. And I am expecting from the weather that we have here that there's probably a pretty good chance that he got some really high temperatures for that triathlon. So I hope he did okay. Safety first, safety first, safety first. Even I know crossing the finish line is a big deal to those guys participating in that triathlon, but safety first. Let's be safe in heat. Everybody, let's be safe in heat. For those of you that are experiencing cool temperatures, safety there too, because frostbite is bad. And maybe some winter episode I'll tell you about the frostbite story that I heard as a teenager that totally changed how I prepare for going out in winter. Anyway, Sue-Ann made a comment about Anne Morrison and the eyelets. And I appreciate the honesty, which is like, the eyelets are tedious and numerous, but worth the effort. And she was really hopeful that I would stick with it and do the eyelets. Anyway, when we get to Anne Morrison, you'll see how far I am. But I appreciated all of those adjectives: tedious, numerous, but well worth the effort. So thank you for that comment. And Shar, thank you so much for, hey, awesome description in your comment, because she gave me exactly what she bought on that Prime Day sale for her 1 terabyte flash drive. So thank you. Prime Day is not occurring right now, so I have put it into my wish list. So thank you so much for that, Shar. And I have a note because Black Friday, Cyber Monday is coming up, and you just never know what kind of deals are going to be there. But thank you, because I have every intention of getting one of those things. I'm just waiting for an Amazon special on that thing. All right, and just another quick reminder for anybody in the Greater Calgary area that our next library our next library get-together for stitching is Saturday, September the 24th at the Signal Hill Library from 9:30 to 12:30. All of the details for that are in the notes section down below. So if you are in the Greater Calgary area and are able to come, you are more than welcome. We've got lots of space. So everybody's welcome. Come, bring a friend, do whatever. We're good to go. So looking forward to seeing those of you who can make it on September 24th. Okay, those are the comments from this week. Let's get into my stitching. So stitching was okay this week. I mean, stitching occurred. Would I say it was my most productive week? No. It was an okay week. Did I accomplish all of my goals? No. That happens. C'est la vie. But stitching got accomplished, which is the more important one. So what did I stitch? Well, I've got all sorts of accessories over here because with the with the windows open and the cross breeze, I had, even when I was setting up, I had things that were blowing off, so we've had to put some weights on things over there. So what did I work on this week? So I worked on my sampler of stitches, which is a series of 9 charts by the Drawn Thread. I am doing this as a stitch along with Sarah the Stitchin' Mommy. We are in the bottom row. I'm currently working on this chart. So this is chart 7 of 9. Just had the moment going. I've got a whole plan for making sure things don't blow off over here. I do not have a plan for how they're not going to blow off on the other side. Anyway, we'll see how it goes. If you hear new things with papers rattling around, it's because they've blown off. So here is a closer look at the chart that I'm working on. So STU. And I'm sort of on track with this one. So I have completed S. Surprisingly, I loved these star stitches. I think they really do look, they look like little stars. I love them. Looking at the white ones look like they are not square, but trust me, they're diamond shaped. That's really interesting that as far as I can see, they don't show up that well, but anyway. So S is now complete. So this week I will be moving down onto T, which is the largest of the 3 letters in that particular block. The interesting thing is this surface darning one, I got to the end of S, so I had all of this done and I was incredibly unhappy with this. So what's the answer to that? Rip it out and do it again. So I'm happier with it now. The answer is I did not follow the instructions. So it was not great. It was okay, but not great when I finished it. And by the time I'd done all of the stitches over here, it looked even worse. And the reason for that is that the instructions for that particular one have you running your threads. I'm just going to show you that little part. Let's see if I've got any. So here's the stitch diagram for the surface darning, and it's going to be hard to tell, but so you go 1, 2, and then come, so up and 1, down and 2, up and 3, down and 4, and sort of back and forth. So these stitches were sort of sliding underneath the fabric. Now I think that's a combination of, you know, the tension as I'm running, like the darning, like, so you sort of overlay, you do this base level of stitches and then you sort of run your darning stitch over top of it. So that combined with the pulling on the other things, it was, all of those edges were sliding underneath and I was very, very unhappy with it, particularly once I got to the end of stitching all of S. Like, it looked awful. It was just awful, 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 awful. So I cut it out, and so the good thing about surface darning is you can sort of really just cut along the edges, and then the whole thing just really pops off, a little cleanup on the back, surface darning. So anyway, So then what I did is I came back, and those base stitches, instead of going sort of coming up at 1, down at 2, up at 3, down at 4, I ran them all the way around, because now they can't slip underneath. So I'm much, much happier. Whether it's proper or not, I don't care. It looks much better. So I'm happier with it, and that's all that counts. I don't care whether I did it correctly or not. The stitching makes me happier. It looks better now. So S is now complete, which is great. So I'm on track. The interesting thing is I was supposed to use some of my time for S, sort of going back and in these sections up here that are still visible from prior charts, going back and attaching the charms and beads. But because I did the surface darning stitch, I don't know, 472 times before I was happy with it, all of my extra stitching time got sucked up into that. So none of that occurred. T, as I mentioned, is, sorry, I keep having to juggle things because I am worried about everything blowing apart. T is the biggest letter on here, so I don't know that I'm going to have any extra time sort of this week or next week while I'm working on that, to start working on that. But when we get down to U, U has a charm, so hopefully U will go relatively quickly and I can get all of that stitched up and start working on adding those charms into the other sections. So again, when I start working on it, my goal is that sort of as I'm working all of this, everything that can, all of the charms and beads that I missed from these, what you can see up to here, so up to there, will get added. I still have sort of most of these blocks. I probably have 2 of the 3 letters plus the row above it, so I would still, even at the end, once I'm done to the bottom, I'll still have to sort of go back up to the top and add those remaining charms and beads. You know, there's not a ton of them, but there is some in every one of the charts left to do. So S is done, and I'm much happier with my surface stitching because I didn't follow the instructions, so that's not atypical. Yes, I was really good about what happens when I start. I'm not good with what happens once I'm done. Okay, so then I was working, we were still in August, and I was working on Anne Morrison, and I had some goals that I set for myself for Anne Morrison. This is an out of print chart. This was a limited edition chart from Traditional Stitches in celebration of their 20th anniversary. So the only place where you can get this now is from resale, so a secondary market. So whether it's eBay, some of the cross stitch buy and sell groups, that's your options for getting this. So I worked on it, but I did not get all of my goals accomplished, and you'll laugh when I talk about it. So here's where I got to. I think I was up to C with no curly cues. It's amazing how much I can avoid doing a curly cue. Anyway, so C is completed, D is completed, E is completed, F is this light blue here, G is going to be my taupe. I put the red centers in with all of in this border here, so those got added. I started working on this border. I'm not sure I love it. So the original called for was red and green. I made mine red and blue because blue is my primary border color. I'm not sure I love it. Throw your comments down below, which meant I kept going with the red and clearly did not keep going with the blue while I debate that, which meant the other thing I did is when I hauled out the light blue to do the B, I started working on the border down here till I sort of ran out of what I had pulled off. I will be using that color again to do the letter F, which means I will do F and catch up hopefully on the border and get that border done. Theoretically, this was going to go away at the end of August, but I did not reach my goal, so it's probably going to stay out a little bit more hopefully a little bit more this week and not past this week, just so I really would like to end this with having everything up to here done. So everything up to this border completed, which is here, which means I'm stopping just before we start with the eyelets. There's a part of me that goes, I should maybe bring it out a little bit more this year, just so that I can finish, so that I can do this eyelet letters here. Because according to the Anne Morrison, when it was being done as a stitch along, where they had sort of done a chunk every month so that you would have it done in 12 months, which means I'm way past when that was occurring. If I finished these eyelet letters, I would be, this bottom part is 6 months. This top part was supposed to be 6 months. This bottom part was 6 months as well. I think I would feel better if I ended the year sort of there, but I've kind of looked at my plans. We'll see how it goes. It's going to be on my mind sort of if I, Sarah, the Stitch and Mommy, she calls it the bonus stitching. If she has bonus stitching, she does X, Y, and Z. Bonus stitching for me will always be bonus stitching at home. It will never be in the car or traveling. So if I have bonus stitching, I'm probably going to haul Anne Morrison back out and see if I can't work on those eyelet letters, which means that's going to be when I make my decision about whether it's all going to be eyelets or not. Which reminds me, let's go back to this one. One of the stitches in here is called the spot stitch. Let me just confirm that. Nope, Square Boss. And it says right up in the chart where it says Square Boss is a good stitch to use instead of a Smyrna cross or a French knot to give a raised dot effect. It was okay. When I originally read it, I'm like, ooh, that would be interesting, because I had this moment where I said I could do an eyelet letter and then a Smyrna letter and then a Square Boss letter and then sort of alternate between the options. So then I did my Square Boss stitch, which are these ones down here. They're okay. Use it as a dot, yes. Use it in place of a Smyrna, not so much for me. So it was an interesting concept until I stitched them. And then I stitched them and I went, that's not really what's going to happen. But, so Anne Morrison has made progress. Please throw your comments down below if you think I should revert this border back to red and green. Or the other option, I counted it out, the number of chunks of these 3 by 3, there is enough that I could actually do red, green, navy, or some like that combination thereof. Like, so it's divisible by 3 to get across here. So let me know if you think that's a better option, because I could go back and do that as well. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Yes, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Yes, that's a correct statement. Sounded wrong, but I think it's accurate. Okay. So Anne Morrison to get worked in August. It did get worked on yesterday as well, even though we were into September. Sorry, I'm just juggling my things here. Because, of course, we all know that when we started a new month, I started working on my Cottage of the Month. So this is the September Cottage by Country Cottage Needleworks. That's going to be dangerous. And where did I get to on this one? I got a decent start. I forgot to look up in Markup RXP how far I got. I want to say I'm probably at about 35%. So the house isn't quite done. I've got to fill in the windows here. and fill in the section here and the doorway. And then I can move on to the trees, the birds, you know, all of that other stuff. I do find it interesting. Now, of course, not surprisingly, because I start these in the center, that I always stitch the house first and then work on these parts. So far I've not changed any of the colors. I am using the called for colors. The called for green is up for debate. Not sure what I'm going to do with that one, so check back next week. The other change that I am going to make is that the fill-in of the door, the windows, and the darker color up here in the top part of the roof is 3031, which is a dark sort of dark black brown. I am making that navy because for some reason I think it's going to work. The dark navy will be the birds as well. And a little bit in the basket. So I'm changing that into a navy, which I'm using DMC 823 for that when I work on that. It's pulled out, ready to go. For some reason with this combination, I just felt like the navy worked better. Anyway. And yes, I did. This is a little orange for me, but it is September and I'm kind of okay with it. There's going to be more red down in the borders and in the tree. I think it's supposed to be an apple tree, so it'll be fine. So September is coming along. Hopefully September will get finished this next week so that I can move on to other things because there's plans. All right, so that is all of the stitching that I've done this week. Let's talk about Stashquisitions. I've got a couple of, so I did not meet up with my friend who is holding my fabric hostage. We'll get that at some point in time. I've placed a couple of orders. I'll explain why those orders got placed when the stuff arrives. Anyway, you'll laugh because I've got a story for both of them. But I did place an order for something this week and it arrived and I'm thrilled with it. You'll laugh when you see it. And I'm blaming Carolyn Zook for this. C-Zook stitch on Flosstube. So I was watching her most recent episode earlier in the week, and she has an Amazon shop. I don't have an Amazon shop. She has an Amazon shop. And I don't know that I'd ever really been in the Amazon shop, but I went, you know, people who have them sometimes put really interesting things in their Amazon shop. Some people really actively add to their Amazon shop, like Stitching with the Housewives. Other people don't add as regularly. I don't know how often Carolyn is adding things to her Amazon shop, but I kind of looked at it and went, I don't know that I've been through her shop. So while I was looking, I went, now's as good a time as any to go and look through what she's got in her Amazon shop. So I went onto her Amazon shop and looked at what she had, and she had interesting things. But there was one thing on there, I looked at it and went, I've always kind of, not got one of those things, but she had an interesting version. So I clicked on it and looked at options, and then, as the options, as you scroll down, other options arrive, and you look at those options, and then when you click on one of those other options, other things show up. So it got interesting. So it's always nice looking on, so her Amazon shop is on Amazon.com because she's in the US, not surprisingly. I am in Canada. Not surprisingly, sometimes there are differences between what you can find on Amazon.com and what you can find on Amazon.ca. So I came up to the Canadian site and had a look at what my options are. And I found something and I bought it and it arrived, and I'm really looking forward to starting to use it. And you're gonna laugh when you see it. So here it comes. Yeah, you got that right. It's a 10-year monthly planner. Yep. I know, there's a bunch of you, some of you are just outright laughing, which is totally fine. Some of you are having a good chuckle, which is also okay. Some of you are going, you're out of your mind and this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of, which is totally fine too. All of those responses, any response is totally fine. So why did I get this? So I have discovered with Markup RXP that I'm turning into one of those crazy people that is starting to track their numbers. I never used to track numbers because I could never see the point of sort of, you know, stitching to the end of something and then counting up the stitches. That was a waste of a good stitching whatever. So I never counted numbers. Now that I have an app that counts the numbers for me, I'm all over the numbers. I call it nerding with numbers. Yes, you can quote me if you want. So I'm starting to be one of those people that is tracking their numbers, which is why I'm laughing, because I forgot to check in Markup RXP when I finished stitching on the cottage last night where exactly I was. But the thing is, I can always go back into the app and figure it out, because in Markup RXP they can show you how many stitches you put in every day on any chart that you've got in there. So even if I forgot to check yesterday, I can go back in and I can look in the app on the timeline and it will say on Saturday you put in X number of stitches, which is great. So what does this calendar look like and how am I planning on using it? So it's, I think according to the description, it's 260 pages. There's not a lot of in between things. So, you know, so it's got a very pretty, so the other thing is, I specifically wanted this cover. Why? Because it goes with my room. I know, is that a reasonable explanation for why you choose a cover in my world? Of course. I bought this one because it goes with my room the best. There was another one that I was looking at, but it didn't go nearly as well. So this is the one that came home. I'm very happy with this cover. It will be interesting to see how well this book stands up after 10 years. This book in Canadian dollars was, I want to say right around $15. So for a 10-year planner, that is $1.50. Let's pretend it was $15.50. I think it was less than that, but whatever. Let's say it was $15.50. That means I'm spending $1.55 Canadian per year of planner. And as far as I'm concerned, it's really hard to come up with a year-long planner that is cheaper than $1.55, that is bound and has a pretty cover. So I'm very happy with this purchase. We'll see how long it works out for me. Okay, so this is the blah, blah, blah. You know, this book belongs to blah, blah. I suppose apparently I can put some kind of a picture in there. I don't know that I'm going to do anything with that page. So then it gives you the whole year, month by month. Now it does say that this is specified for US, which means all of the holidays down here are American holidays. So they are not the Canadian holidays, which is totally fine because I can fix that on my own. This is going to be good for things like when I started off 2022, because I was doing the Sal with the Stitch and Mommy for the drawn thread. So I actually so I did print a year-long calendar out so that I could write down when I was expecting that my letters were supposed to be completed on, and I clearly had, you know, some other scribbly notes on here, some of which have worked out as planned, many of which have not surprisingly. There have been adjustments and changes. Again, I always laugh at that comment about, you know, my resolve to keep with my plans. Sorry, I'm adjusting my, I have an ice pack behind me so that I don't get too glowy. The comment that, you know, my resolve to stay with my plans, and I'm totally resolved, and I absolutely hardcore stick with my plans right up until the point where I decide to change, adjust, and reverse, all that kind of stuff. Add something in, take something out. It's totally firm. We all know that. Anyway, so this calendar you know, again, will allow me to put in some comments about some things. There's a whole page for notes. This is going to be critical. I have discovered, so a week ago on Wednesday, I was doing something, and I had this moment where I was like going, oh my goodness, that's a perfect Flosstube topic. And I was so excited because I went, oh my goodness, I'm going to talk about that on Sunday. It was on a Wednesday afternoon, and by the time we hit Wednesday evening and I was talking to a friend of mine, I couldn't remember what it was. And to this day, I still have not remembered what it was, but it was a good one. So I'm planning on I've made a note to self that when I have these thoughts, I need to write them down instantly. Forget this, write it down later, you'll remember. The answer is I won't. 27 things will have occurred between then, and they may or may not come back to me. Same thing, I had that probably that same week, I had a really great thought process where I'm like going, oh my goodness, that's a great chart to use for lent stitching. Didn't write it down, kind of, you know, 3 days later, I'm like, man, what is that? Because I was looking at my 5-year plan and looking at one of the empty Lent spots. Anyway, it's come back to me. I've written it down so it can get incorporated into the plan. But this is, you know, I don't feel like I need 27 pages of notes. So I think the 1 page of notes is good for me. It's lined, that's also helpful. And then you're right into the calendar. So every month is 2 pages. One of the things that I like best is it starts on a Sunday. I will say I was looking at some of them, and some of the negative comments were along the lines of, I hate that the calendar starts with a Monday. Monday is not the start of the week. I'm on that page. Sunday should be the first day of the week in a calendar. That's just how my brain processes things. So it starts with the Sunday. You know, decent sized blocks. Again, my plan for this is really just to keep track of what I actually worked on any given day and how many stitches I got done on that project. And then it's got a little note section over here, which will allow me to you know, again, write some comments, Flosstube topics, ideas for charts, wish lists. You know, I'm watching Flosstube XYZ. And they come up with really great things. Some of them at Happy Handcraft Studio, now that I'm starting to watch her, she's got really great book recommendations. So I can write those down so I can add them into my to-be-read list. So I'm not planning on going into the land of the stickering and all that kind of stuff. I'm not planning on hauling out, you know, stickers and coloring things, and I'm probably not going to do that. I'm planning on using this just to track what I've stitched on any given week and how many stitches I've put in. How many stitches, again, will falter when I'm working on specialty stitch things. You know, that's just how that works. And again, even for specialty stitch things, I'm not planning on counting up the stitches. Not going to happen. I'm not spending my time that way. Anyway, so 2 pages, you know, and again, it just goes straight through to the end of the year. All right, so there's my December. And then the very next page is the 2024 calendar and a page of notes, right? So there's no end of year review pages or blah, blah, blah things. It just keeps going. Anyway, we'll see how it goes. Again, if I only use this for 1 year and then it falls off the wayside, I'm still going to be okay with that because I felt the $15 was fine. The $15 is less than what I would pay if I were buying a book of days. And again, so I'm very happy with this purchase. I will put a link to this in the notes section down below if you're looking for one. There's a wide variety of covers and all that kind of stuff. So the reason why it came from Carolyn Zook, the search started with Carolyn Zook because she had in her Amazon shop her 2-year planner, which was 2022 to 2023, which is why it led me down the path of, while I was looking at that, it led me down to 5-year planners. And once you click on 5-year planners, if you scroll down, you end up with 10-year planners. And then when I came to Canada and I looked for the 10-year planners and went $15, yeah, you came home. So we'll see how it goes. I am only planning on using this for stitching related things. I am certainly not getting one of these for my real life. Certainly not at this point in time, because I am not good about using a planner like for life things. As far as I'm concerned, you know, even at work, my calendar, my electronic calendar is where I use to keep track of things, the basic things. Dental appointments, when I have to, you know, get XYZ out, it's all sitting in an electronic planner so that I can have it with me at all times. This works for stitching because it doesn't have to travel. It won't travel with me anywhere. It's just going to sit here in the room, which is why it was really important that it coordinated with my room. I said to myself I was going to try to find something purpley to wear today, but given the warmth in this room, we went with green. It still relatively goes. There's a little bit of, you know, pink in here, so it'll be fine. So there's my coordinating things. So it's only going to stay. It's only going to be used for stitching primarily. It's going to live in this room. I suppose in those really horrible winter months, it's going to have to move into the other stitching spot, which is totally fine because there's light green over there too. So it's going to go just fine. But yeah, so I'm bizarrely excited about this. I really wished it started in September. You know, you can get those like 16-month planners that start in like August or September or whatever. Anyway, I wish it started in September, but it doesn't. And it will be fine. It will be fine. I can hold off until January 1st. But it did make me look at things at the calendars and go, I can tell you right now, Christmas Day 2022 is occurring on a Sunday. I can tell you right now, I will not be recording on Christmas Day, nor will I be uploading on that particular day. We'll get more into the details of what's going to happen in December when we get in there, but I looked at it and went, well, I know for sure I'm not recording that day. Which means that January 1st is a Sunday as well. But I think that there will actually probably be, I will record a video that day, just because I know of sort of how my New Year's Day usually works out. So there probably will be one that day. What time it gets fully uploaded, you may not see it until the 2nd. But anyway, yeah, so I'm very happy about this. Bizarrely happy about this, but that's not new. Yeah. So the quick thought, loading times. I've been, several of the Flosstubers have been commenting on this, and I will add my 2 cents in as well. YouTube is, it's getting interesting with loading times. I know that Pam and Steph from Just Keep Stitching were commenting that with the rates at which their videos are loading, that you really shouldn't expect to see their videos until Monday, because it's sometimes taking overnight to load. I will say, from my experience, I will say that the videos are taking longer to upload. Now, with anything, I'm calling it technical, it can be hit and miss. I've had episodes where I was like all prepared, going like, this is going to be like a 4 or 5 hour process for this thing to get up, and it went lickety split. So those are the ones, like if you see a video like by 7 p.m. Mountain Time, that's one where the whole thing is loaded up really quickly. Other than that, it's taking, you know, like I say, anywhere between sometimes 4 to 5 hours for a video to load, process, and be ready to be published. You know, now let's not kid ourselves. You don't necessarily have to sit at the computer for the 4 or 5 hours while it's going on. I tend to use a good chunk of that time doing things like cleaning out emails, sometimes wandering onto Etsy for all the wrong reasons. Anyway, 12 things are going on. But yeah, it can take longer. So I'm with everybody else. It's really hit and miss. I do feel in general that the loading times are getting longer. So it's when they get published is when they get published. There's nothing I can do about that. All right. And with that, let's get into the topic, which is how did, what did I call it? I've lost the topic. It's really, how did my August go, my August heat concept. So let's start off with, I'm really glad that I worked the August heats into my calendar, and I'm probably going to work that into my calendar next year as well, because what it forced me to do is work on projects that were carried over from the previous year that hadn't been touched at all, right? So by the time we hit August, certainly Anne Morrison had not come out again. The Banquet had come out. The Banquet had come out to be worked on, which is how I got. So when I started the year, I had 4 of the 8 charts done, which meant sort of over the beginning part of, in January and February of 2022, I actually got chart 5, 6, and 7 completed, and a little bit of 8. But again, so I'm really glad that I brought this concept up, because it meant that I worked on things. I was like going, I worked on something else. What was it? It's My Big Toe, The Work of Christmas. So The Work of Christmas came out and Morrison came out. Now it does mean that I've got some other charts from last year that have not yet been worked on. So my Canadian Patriotic Sampler has not been worked on. The Ink Circles Bee's Knees has not been worked on. And the Stony Creek Tapestry of Life has not been worked on. So I am adjusting my plans for these back 4 months of the year to work those in so that they at least see the light of day. And really my goal, well, that's not true. The goal for the Ink Circles Bee's Knees will be to get 1,000 stitches in. I don't know that 1,000 stitches on the Stony Creek one is necessarily a realistic goal, because it's Stony Creek and it's a little fiddly. There's a lot of back stitching in there, and we all know I'm not counting that stuff. So we'll see how that one goes. But I am working them into the plans to make sure that they get worked on. And again, this is probably like the Carolyn Zook episode. You need to make sure in your rotations that you actually are working those old projects into your rotation. And I started off the year with a plan about how they were going to work into the rotation. By the time we hit April, most of it hadn't come to fruition. Why? Because I was adding things and doing things differently, and certain things took longer than I expected. You know, June was a complete, like everything I thought was going to happen in June didn't happen. Okay, the Cottage of the Month got stitched. Okay, so that one got stitched. But with StitchCon, the after effects of StitchCon, the things that I worked on at StitchCon, you know, coming home and trying to whip out that stitch that chart for my dad for Father's Day, sucked up a lot of time. I got it done. It was great. You know, so all of that plan changed, which meant sort of the plans in June for what I was originally going to be working on June, none of that happened. So I'm glad that I worked, you know, and again, the August heats was I was going to pick things from my WIP pile that were close to finishes so I could get them done. And that started off great with Frida's Banquet, but then it fell off the rails because I started to work on the Work of Christmas, which was not close to a finish. It got, you know, I want to say, what, 1,500 stitches into it, which was great progress. So more progress than I probably originally thought was going to happen on it. I got that floral border done, which is great because it means the next time it comes out, it means that there's letters to be worked on, which in my head go a little bit faster. But the point is that I need to make sure when I'm doing my planning that I'm putting those explicitly into the plan. So like I say, I originally had them in the plan. I would say for the first chunk of this year, the plans for how that was going to work out have not come to fruition. You know, the firm, concrete plan that is subject to change. So I am adjusting sort of my plans for these last 4 months so that I can make some progress on. So hopefully between now and the end of the year, you will see all of those 3 charts that I've just mentioned come out again. You'll probably have a really good guess about what's going to happen in December. But again, it was a learning. I'm glad that I worked. The only new start that I originally had in the plan for August was the cottage. Now, that in and of itself, it got changed because I started Musical Christmas so that I could do a reward. Again, I'm glad I worked it into the thing. You'll notice I did not show Musical Christmas because I did not finish my Morrison goal, so I didn't get a reward. I was really tempted on Saturday to just haul out Musical Christmas and do a trombone anyway, but I said, no, you're supposed to do the reward. So I'm still planning on keeping up the reward concept, so hopefully Anne Morrison will get finished to where I'm happy with her, which means there will be a reward for that. I am planning on doing a reward when I finish my Cottage of the Month. So again, I've learned a lot from August. I'm glad that I set aside a month where theoretically there was only one new start, because it allowed me all of that time to work on stuff from my WIP pile. So that's awesome. And I'm, like I say, I've worked that into the plan for 2023, that August is sort of going to be, I'm calling it August Heats again. So when we get to August and you see August Heats, you'll know what's going on. It's really August work on your whips. Anyway, so that's occurring. Yeah, I liked it. Again, I liked the adjustment that I added in the reward. Now, I don't know that next year that I will have the same reward. The reward system for this year is working out simply because of the piece that I chose, that it's got these small things. Like, I want to say each of the instruments is about 350 stitches, right? So it's not obnoxiously large. Like, one of the cottages, a Cottage of the Month, is about 2,500 stitches approximately, right? So the 350 stitches for an instrument is not that much, which is why it makes a really nice sort of mini reward, because you can just sort of work it in and get it done. A good solid evening of stitching gets the reward stitched up. So I enjoy that. The reward system is hopefully going to continue for the rest of this year, because I really am hoping that I can get all 9 squares done. So if I get 2 rewards sort of over the next 10 days, I'm calling it 10 days, yes, let's see how long some of these things take. If I get 2 more, that will take me to 5. So I will only have 4 squares left to fill in. Just for counting purposes, I'll let you know right now, technically it's 10 more instruments the way that I've got it mapped out. So if I get 2 rewards in the next 10 days, that means I'm halfway through finishing that table runner, barring the finishing, which we won't, there's no point worrying about that till we're, way closer to a finish. When we get to starting stitching on that center square and that table runner, that's when we'll start really talking about how I'm going to finish that thing, because then we'll be close. Right now, we're not close. Anyway, so it's been a productive month. I don't have stats for you like Carolyn Zook has, but with my new planner, I think there's a decent possibility that when we get into 2023, I'll do a better job of sort of telling you my stats. It's been interesting watching Sarah, the Stitchin' Mommy, and Carolyn Zook talking about their plans for next year, which they're totally planning on sort of changing their approach. I always appreciate someone who says, I want to do something different this year, because you know that I've done that sort of every year that I've been doing Flosstube. I've been doing things a little bit differently. And so every year I learn something about my stitching and how I stitch and what makes me excited about my stitching. I try different things. Some of them work, some of them don't. I like to call it, you get to the end and you sort of have lessons learned. So dear viewers, trust me, when we get into December, there's going to be a whole episode on lessons learned from 2022, things that I've learned about myself, my stitching, how my plans have adapted, what have I learned that I'm taking forward with me into the new year, and how my plan is working out. Which also goes back to, why am I not putting, so I keep my plan, just in case anybody's wondering, I keep my plan in Excel. I'm an Excel spreadsheet girl. I'm, again, nerding with numbers. It's my educational background. It's my professional background. You put me in a spreadsheet with numbers and away I go. I can do amazing things in Excel on a variety of fronts. So my 5-year plan is actually sitting in Excel because it makes it really easy to change and move and adjust and say, that was a really good concept for there, and I want to keep the concept, but it has to get moved down, and because it now needs to be replaced with something else. So that's why I do it in Excel. I am, like I say, my 10-year planner will have none of those plans. None of those plans. This is a book for me to track what I actually worked on. What I've actually spent my days doing is what is the purpose of this book. This book, I know, monthly planner. It's not a monthly planner. This is a monthly tracker. Right, so that's how I'm planning on using this book. I will not be putting in plans of what I'm doing, where and when and all that kind of stuff. That's going to stay in Excel because I've said multiple times, my plans are subject to change. And they can change quite regularly. So I don't want to put them in there and have to go, I think I told the story that I had 1 year planned out and I came up with this new concept and went, oh my goodness, that absolutely trumps what that plan for that. Like, this is such a great concept. It has to get worked into the 5-year plan earlier. So I booted a whole year out and moved it so it could get replaced with this other concept. And I really love the concept. I'm really looking forward to it. In case anybody's wondering, 2026, I'm loving the plan for 2026. I know you're sitting there going, you are ridiculous if you love it so much, work on it now. And the answer is no, because I have plans for 2023. They're there for a reason. They're there for a reason. They're goals and things that I want to get stitched up for a reason. So 2023 is staying intact. 2026, like I say, got booted out a year because it got replaced with an entire other plan. It will be fascinating to me to see how that plan comes to fruition, because that might get replicated several times if it works out. But I know, it sounds totally weird. 2026, I'm so excited. 2025 is a good one too. I like what I've got in 2023. 2024, again, is serving a purpose. The overall concept, I would say I'm not exactly as excited about, but the things are in there for a reason and I don't want to move them, so they're staying. Anyway, all of that, none of that has to do with anything with August. So August worked out. I'm glad I set the month aside. I'm really glad I set it aside, because even though my original plan didn't work out the way that I thought it was going to work out, and quite frankly, if I had stuck with that plan, I would have had more finishes. I would have gotten things accomplished that I didn't get accomplished, which is totally fine, because at the end it means that I worked on some of these bigger projects. And if you don't, again, here's the Carolyn Zook thing again, if you don't bring the bigger projects out and work on them somewhat regularly, they're never going to get finished, right? The work of Christmas is never going to get finished if I don't bring it out and give it a decent chunk. Like I say, I put in about 1,500 stitches. It got me that floral band. Didn't get me any of the letters. I've still got all the words above it, plus the top, plus some of the motifs in the bottom. There's a lot of stitching left to go on that. And Morrison, right? If I bring it out this year and if I get this next band completed, the eyelet letters, according to the Anne Morrison Sal plan, like I've still got 6 months of stitching left to go to get this completed. Anyway, so I'm taking those lessons learned, I'm working them into the 2023 plan. Like I say, it was a good month. I learned things. The reward system worked out great. I might be looking for some charts that I've got that can be treated as rewards. The musical Christmas one I love because it's one project. They're all little. Got a shot at maybe getting that completed before Christmas this year. So I might be looking for sort of something of that type. Again, the positive thing is it gave me a little reward of something concrete, stitching up, 300, 350 stitches. I think one of them was 450, but whatever, where it was like a complete change and I worked it in. So we'll see. Anyway, with that, that's all I've got for you this week. So I hope everybody's had a really great week. There are some weather things and world event things. There's always some not good things going on in the world. As always, I am continuing to think of the people of the Ukraine. Anyway, I'm still surprised that I'm having to say that, but we are where we are. So dear people of the Ukraine, my thoughts and prayers are with you. I am solidly behind the people of the Ukraine and them maintaining and being an independent nation, fighting an unjust war. So anyway, with that, we're going to end with my favorite tagline: safety first, safety first, safety first. Safety first, safety first, safety first. I want everybody to be safe, be healthy, and I hope you find some time to do some stitching. I hope you're enjoying your long weekend. Certainly if you're in North America, both Canada and the US, this is the Labor Day weekend, so a lot of people have Monday off, so they've got a 3-day weekend. So if you are doing that, I hope you are having a great weekend. Safety first, safety first, safety first. Long weekends are notorious for, road accidents, particularly on highways. Safety first, safety first. Better to arrive safe and unharmed and late than not arriving at all. And I know that actually I do have a friend who that they have a real life lesson that didn't happen for them. So safety first. Be safe, be healthy, find some time to do some stitching, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.